Hi, everyone. Welcome all who are tuning in. My name is Brenna Grace, and I am your hostess with the mostest tonight. I am the festival director for Spring Mysteries, and this is the road to Eleusis. The mysteries approach, and we are all feeling the call of the Great Mother. She wants us to come and witness and participate in her sacred rites. So, you should do that and register at www.springmysteries.com. Now, tonight brings us a special panel with discussions with the Temple of Ares, god of war, and Temple of Hephaestus, god of the forge. So, make sure you share your questions in whatever chat you're in. We'll see them anywhere you are, and we will make sure to get as many questions answered as we can in the time that we have. Remember, we are asking questions to the priests, priestesses who have held these deities. So it is not talking to the gods, it's talking to the people. Let's see, we begin with Temple of Ares, and then make sure you stay till 7 so that you can watch the Temple of Hephaestus as well. Now, if at any point we drop the call or we drop the video, just wait where you are, refresh a couple times, we'll come back. Sometimes the gods bring in so much energy that they break the whole thing. So we have to reboot it up and keep going. So don't leave, stick around. All right, and welcome to, without further ado, the Temple of Ares. Yay! I'm going to go ahead and introduce the Temple Votary. That is our wonderful own, also assistant for Nicodemus Shadow Sky. Hi, Nico. Would you introduce your other brethren that are going to be here / are here?
Yes. With us, we also have Kieran, who is a current vessel. And then we also have Sean, also known as Kestrel, who will be joining us a little bit later.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, if you've been here, you know the drill. We're going to start off with a fun question, get warmed up, and see where luck takes us. All right. So, Ares. You know what? I don't know a whole lot about the Temple of Ares or Hephaestus, so I'm really excited to host these tonight and learn more. Does Ares have any foods or drinks that he loves or prefers?
Well, for me, he was a very meat and potatoes man. Any chance I got to eat a steak, chicken, I had lamb, I think, quite a few times more than I had in years. But just very rustic, very filling food that, kept you full as long as it could and tasted good too.
Yep, fair. Kieran?
For me, so far it's been spicy food. Which, like, I don't have a super high spice tolerance, but I've noticed it's gotten better since holding Ares. And so now I just put Cajun seasoning on literally everything because otherwise it's apparently just unacceptable. There we go.
I also put Cajun seasoning on just about everything.
Not a bad decision in general.
Right? So when you were given the role of Ares, when you were given the role of Ares, what things did you notice immediately regarding like how you acted or like maybe activities that you enjoyed doing, hobbies, stuff like that?
Incredibly impatient. If I had to wait 2 minutes more than I thought was necessary, I had to bounce my foot. I have to be doing something. He's very action oriented. But also Ares was a surprise for me because at that point I had already been Hephaestus and I was expecting there to be, I guess, internal conflict. I wasn't very excited to get the role at first. And then it turned out to be a huge growth experience for me. It wasn't anything like I had expected it to be. And so it was just a great experience for me overall. But oh my God, so impatient.
What about you, Kieran?
For me, it's very similar in that he gets bored. Oh my lord! One moment.
Won't be bored now. Our wonderful Kieran joins us from work because his work is so lovely to let him join us. He just has to go answer calls every once in a while. So,
I can actually build off of my answer a little bit too.
yeah,
I
sure.
had always anticipated because there's always something we gain from these roles that we hold, and I was waiting for him to be like, okay, we're gonna work on your health, we're gonna work out every day, we're gonna do all this stuff. And so when he came in, I was just like, okay, how often am I going to the gym? What's my diet looking like? And he's like, nope, we're working on your anger issues. And I was like, oh, I'd rather go to the gym. Which, again, it turned out to be exactly what I needed, and I'm, leaps and bounds further from where I was internally and just as a person in general for it. But it was very entertaining just to see all the different new things that came up.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm back. But the big thing that I noticed at first is that he gets bored really, really easily, and so it's constantly having to find something to do, which is why I'm sitting here quilting, because that's apparently the new thing. Uh, and yeah, so it's really just constantly having to do something, which fortunately has been really good with creative stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. We have our behind the scenes producer says quilting takes planning and discipline. Those count. We have a question from the audience from Chris. I also don't know a lot about Aries. Myths seem to put him off as bloodlust and wanting a fight. Is there more to him that you found out? Big question. Great question. Who would like to start?
All right. He is often painted as the I want to tear people in half and just kill, kill, kill. It's more of a byproduct of a particular skill that he's good at, which is war. But it's very much more so the fact that he is action oriented. He parallels Athena as the opposite side of the coin in that Athena is very methodically thought out. She will lay out a plan. She will have counter plans. She thinks everything ahead of time. With Aries, it's a matter of if you don't think of a way to win, there's no way to lose. So we just go until we win. And so I think one of the main reasons he comes off as bloodlust like that is because his plans are often very off the cuff or spur of the moment, because that's how he functions. He sees he sees the situation ahead of him. He decides on a thing he's going to do, and then he does it. It's less methodical, but it's still thought out. It's just a different style. And sometimes the simplest thing to do is to, cut them in half.
So to kind of build off of that, to kind of build off of that, the comparison between Aries and Athena, in my experience, Athena is really the cerebral part of war, the strategy, the game of chess, the planning, who's going to be where, when, all that stuff. Whereas Aries is, for lack of a better term, the actual action of war. Aries is kind of what happens after, like, the chess game and all the strategy has been played out, basically. then you send Aries in and he does the thing. And so he ends up getting portrayed as more of the bloodlust and everything, because his part of war is the actual doing of it. Not to say that Athena doesn't fight, but like Ares is more known for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that comes. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Nico.
Oh, that comes. A lot of that painting comes from a lot of social portrayals, social media, things like the God of War game series, things where Ares can be, in some cases, the villain, or in some cases, just really the impatient fighter. He doesn't want to sit around and talk tactic. He wants to just go out and get it done so we can go to the next thing. And so it's kind of like Athena is thought of as a goddess of knowledge, but there's so much to her than that, as you are well aware, Votary. Ares is known as the fighter, the fighter in bloodlust, but that's just the surface. There's layers and depth to that description.
And
So
also
many.
And also on top of that, not only is Ares a god of war, but he's also a god of dance, which is something that doesn't get talked about very much.
Right.
Mostly because, probably because that's not really the fun and interesting part for like media.
Well, that and also, the myths reflect what was going on in Greece at the time, right? And there was a lot of war happening. And so that was their main focus when they were writing these myths. And so, Ares showed up more at war because there was less dance happening.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. I've seen Votary, Vessel, and Votive in these temple chats. Can you explain what they all do in the temple? I sure can. So a Votary is the head of the temple. It is a person who has held the role and really connected with that deity and really understands their energy. And so they are in charge of the temple, which right now in this day and age means that they are someone that the rest of the temple can go to for advice. If they're having issues with that deity that they're holding, they can go to them. Or even if, say, I am the votary of Athena. If like Kieran is holding Aries this year, if he were to have an issue with like Athena's energy, he could totally come to me and say, I don't understand this. Can you help me talk it out like in an Athena Aries way? We'd be like, yes, let's do it. Right. The vessel is the current person holding the deity. The votive is someone who has held it in the past. So Votary, vessel, but yep, okay, that's all three. Making sure I hit them all. In the future, we really, we want physical temples, and as we grow, obviously our dreams grow, and we want land, we want temples, and so hopefully they'll be able to actually run an actual temple someday is the hope. So, yay! Good question, Wendy. Thank you. Yes, and all these roles make up the priesthood and or the clergy. That is correct. Okay, I would love to hear myths about Aries. Maybe your favorite or one that stood out to you the most. Because, we really don't hear a whole lot of myths about him besides just charging into battle.
So I won't lie, my favorite myth about Aries more includes Aries than anything else. And it's just because it makes me laugh every time I think about it or tell it. And it's the story of Electreon. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there's a myth involving Ares, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus, where Ares and Aphrodite, sequester away to make love. And Ares charges Electreon to guard their place where they are so that, no one comes upon them. And at one point, Electreon, during his duty of guarding, fell asleep, and Helios caught sight of them and told, I think, Hephaestus, and that led to the net being cast and the whole affair there. Electreon, who obviously had failed in his duties, was punished by Ares by being turned into a rooster. And that is why Electreon is the god of roosters and chickens.
I've never heard that one before.
I know. It's just one of the things where it's like, of course there's a god of roosters. And of course it's because Ares' sentry fell asleep.
Fascinating. What about you, Kieran? Do you have a favorite myth of Ares?
It's also that one.
Well, I do have another
That's
one.
fair.
I do not tell it near as well as the person who told me, but it was about Ares and fear. And again, forgive me if I don't tell this story near as well as I should, but it's basically Ares's children represent fear in regard. I think there's 3 of them, and they each have a particular thing that they represent. Apologies to not having the information, but he rid himself of his fear through his children being away from him. But then he realized as he was in battle that he couldn't do what he did as well as he could because he didn't have his fear. And it's a wonderful myth, and it teaches you how you shouldn't think of fear as something to be rid of, but more to be utilized, because fear makes us grow. And it's a wonderful myth, and I welcome and encourage everyone to look it up and read through it. It's a wonderful story. I don't retain that much information.
I was just looking it up. So Phobos is the god of panic.
Yeah.
Deimos is the god of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So Phobos and Deimos are the ones that he got rid of fear and panic with. That's right. All right, we have a couple great questions coming in. So, what might we set up in our own homes to hold space for Aries?
Go ahead, Karen.
So for me, Aries is less of a deity that you might set up a whole altar to, and more of to hold space for Aries is more of a thing of doing. And so it's, if you have a space in your house that is dedicated to creative pursuits, putting things out into the world, that is a good, basically, place to hold space for Aries.
So another version of that would be if you have a room where things are constantly happening just in general. If you have, obviously we're in a pandemic, but just in general, if you have a room that is often the site of family gatherings or board game nights or a place where things are doing or happening, that is also a space. For specific altars, if you want to do an altar for Aries, sharp objects of the stabby persuasion are usually popular. The thing about altars is it's all about intent. So, for example, I have a wonderful friend from work who was playing with a 3D printer and wanted to print me something, and so he printed me a little Among Us character that could be pulled in half, like it is when it's killed in the game, and it happened to be the red one that he made me, and so it sits on my altar in front of the Ares statue. As sort of his little conquest thing, because it's funny. So really whatever evokes the feeling of, Aries in general, dance, if you have a favorite song or CD, or a dance track, that would be something. Anything in the color red, that's kind of his shtick. I'm trying to think of anything else that I have. Garnet or anything pertaining to the root chakra is also really good because he doesn't sugarcoat. he gets straight to the point, and a lot of his energy is grounding, which is very synonymous to the root.
Thank you. And I believe our Sean just popped in. I'm not sure if he can be on video yet or not. But yay, welcome, Sean. There he is. Ooh, you have some feedback things going.
I turned it up.
Here. Let me my headset.
Okay. All right. So we're letting him go to his headset. In the meantime, we will start answering the next question we got in. How does Aries work with Aphrodite's energy? What strength there can we bring into our own relationships? Oh, what a good question.
The short answer is really well.
The longer answer is passion is really what comes out of that. And so the main thing that really can be gained out of that particular pairing is passion for anything. It's not just like passion in a sexual term or a romantic term. It's passion for anything. And so it's just working with both of them to help to steal a concept from Hephaestus, stoke the fires, as it were.
You'll notice that I am also wearing my little rose for Aphrodite since it's Aries and Hephaestus tonight. Thought I'd give her a little shout out.
Sean is sideways.
He's fixing it. Yes, that's the thing that both of them have very, very much in common is passion. To do anything, to have the drive to do anything and do it well is passion. And then Aphrodite, all fair in love and war. The passions of love, romance, and intimacy. But it is also a it's the sacred duality, and it's finding the balance. Aries is he's a very big, very intimidating, and at times overwhelming energy, and she tempers that because Aries can also be very soft and very caring, especially when it comes to Aphrodite.
Thank you, Nico. Let's see. Can we hear you, Sean?
I think so.
Yay! There we go. So nice to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Not a problem.
So we are just talking about how does Aries work with Aphrodite's energy. They were mentioning that, both of them are very passionate, and Aphrodite kind of tempers Aries a little bit. Do you have anything to add to that?
I would have to totally agree with Aphrodite tempering Aries. She brings out his soft side. When I held Aries for Spring Mysteries, if it wasn't for Aphrodite, there would have been some, shall we say, rage energy going on because of things in my life. But because of Aphrodite, I was able to calm down and work through it. That's one thing she taught me as Aries.
That is awesome. It is so wonderful to see the back and forth of these receptive and projective energies and deities. It's so fun. I, of course, have a lot of thoughts as a priestess of Aphrodite, but I'm going to wait till next week when it's my turn.
I'm sure you do.
I do too. All right. So many good questions coming in here. Do you also work with his Mars aspect? So the Roman counterpart.
No, because I work with Mars's grandfather, unfortunately.
Yes, Nico is a big Saturn person.
I don't know if I'm a big Saturn person, but I did have the pleasure of holding Saturn for a Hekate Festival some years back. And it's one of those things where when you've got one, maybe two of the planets working around in your head, that's enough for me. They're a lot. They can be a lot.
I personally don't work much with Mars because that aspect has never called out to me.
Fair. Kieran?
I personally, I'm kind of similar to Sean in that the Mars aspect has never really called to me. Sorry, I'm like trying to do three things at once at this point.
Typical Aries.
Definitely the current vessel.
Typical Aries. All right.
Yeah.
That is a good point to bring up, that just because, like, especially with the Greeks and Romans, one does not necessarily always equate the other. You will find parallels, especially when doing your research on one or the other. And you can gain some insight in the Greek by looking at the Roman, or the Roman by looking at the Greek, but it's not unanimous, or not unanimous. It's not a guaranteed Aries has shown up, therefore I'm also working with Mars.
Right.
Yes, that is correct. There's a lot of really cool info on how the Romans viewed gods, and it is actually very different from the Greeks. So they are not the same, but there are lots of similarities. Let's see. The next question we have is, how can we support the warriors in our life through Aries?
That's a good question.
I suppose I would counter ask if you mean literally like our military military folks, veterans, or if you're talking about the figurative warrior, the person in our life who is kind of always there, always taking on something for you, always trying to support, and be what people need to be.
Well, why not both?
I was in there. I am not learned enough to know a lot of resources when it comes to supporting the military. But I mean, just the simple act of thanking a service member for their service can sometimes make their day. Just goodwill in general, and being an overall good person, especially if someone comes up and you happen to be at the store and you hear that they're getting a military discount, or they're wearing their uniform, or if it's a veteran, they're wearing their notable hat. Just taking a moment to get their attention and thank them for their service, shake their hand, sometimes just makes their day. For me, the warrior aspect in me, it is sometimes humbling and oftentimes required to have someone tell me that I can take a break. If you have someone who's always volunteering their time, volunteering their energy, their services to support the people in their lives, it's sometimes very necessary for me to have someone here, like something along the lines of, you don't have to do everything. You can take a break. What can I do for you? Because sometimes the reasoning that we are that kind of person is working through things that we have experienced in our lives, and we sometimes get lost in the acts of service to the point that we forget to serve ourselves. It's very easy for someone who is constantly serving to forget to take care of themselves because they begin to prioritize everything else. And just verbally hearing, you can take a break. Reminds you, it's just kind of that thing of, oh God, right, I haven't drank water today. Oh, I haven't eaten, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Nico. All right. Sean, how about you? How do you think we can support the warriors within our lives?
Nico said a lot of stuff that came to my mind. I get on the service point of view. I get a lot of military and retired military coming into my work. I make it a point to thank all of them. On the home front point of view, I do the same thing with all our doctors and nurses, because they're the warriors in the hospitals right now.
Yeah, they are.
I don't care what you do, whether you're a candy striper all the way up. I know candy stripers aren't around anymore, but the equivalent, all the way up to surgeons. I will thank them for doing what they do so we can stay alive.
Absolutely. Do you have anything to add, Kieran?
My big thing that I would say is, especially if you're thinking of the warriors in your personal life, finding out from them what it is that they need for support, whether that's just like the occasional hug or someone to talk to, just basically finding out what it is that they need, and to the best of your ability, providing that to them. So if it's like, if say you've got someone who works in a hospital or something, being ready with like a hot drink or something when they get home so they can relax, or whatever it is that helps them decompress from all the work, all the amazing work that they do, and just doing what you can to support them in the way that best fits them.
Awesome. Thank you all. That was a good one. Man, we have a lot of really good questions here. I don't have to ask any of mine. Okay. What is a lesser known power or magic of Aries that you'd like to work with?
Kieran brought it up a little earlier, but the aspect of the dancer. For me, when I was younger, I always told myself I wanted to learn to tango because it looked complicated. But he is that. It's just that when you freestyle, or when you have a dance that you spend hours, days, weeks learning to perfection, routine things like cheer or competitive dance, things like that, that drive and that, I guess to an extent, wild creativity that is expression, is something that I try to use To an extent, I guess, not necessarily in dance itself, just because I don't have a whole lot of reasons or spaces to dance in and with, but that channeling of that similar drive into the things that I can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I'm right.
You have something to add, Sean?
I was just saying, I'm right there with you, Nico. I do the same.
Anything to add, Kieran?
My whole thing is him being a god of passion, not just when he's in combination with Aphrodite, but basically finding something that I'm passionate about and being able to throw my whole self into it in a way that I hadn't been able to do before.
Awesome. All right. This is a really good question. So, would setting up an altar to Aries bring conflict or conflictive energies into your home?
I would say no, because his domain is not conflict, but the will and passion needed to face conflict. So I would say putting up an altar for Aries would bring solid footing energetically, passion, drive, and the manifestation of action. So if you are someone who is often indecisive or finds yourself in a place of stagnation where you're kind of going through the same motions, you're in that figurative rut, this will bring about momentum to the things that you want to do, but maybe aren't able to get out of that rut to do. I get like kind of what we said earlier. He's often viewed as the fighter, but it's less so the fact that he brings about fights, more so that he brings about the action needed to fight, or the drive and passion and will needed to fight.
Absolutely. And I would also compare it with, if you look at Aphrodite and Aries together, you've got the receptive and projective. And often working couples, it's the receptive where you get the idea, right? So the idea comes to you and you're like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And so the idea is, in old Gardnerian Wicca that, you had to be a male-female working couple, right? But it's really, you have to be a receptive, projective energy to have a very powerful magic combination, which you can be either. You could choose. doesn't really matter. It's easier if you really identify with one of those or the other, right? But the receptive priestess would have the idea, say how they wanted to do it, plan it, and then the projective then goes, all right, let's go, boom, and creates it. And so that also brings in Athena too. Actually, I didn't even think of that. Anything else to add to that?
The one thing I will say about that is that while it may not attract or bring in conflict, it may, however, cause existing conflicts that haven't been dealt with to surface. So it's not that it's bringing the conflict, it's that it's basically Aries saying, you need to deal with this.
Yes. You need to resolve the conflict. That's what my Aries altar did. It brought in the drive to resolve the conflicts, not let them just sit by the wayside.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want any conflicts just sitting there.
Yeah, a common visual that had when I was going through my motions as a learning priest was the thing in the box on the shelf, which is the things that you are either not addressing or, in this particular case, that you are avoiding. He's very much the, oh, you're just letting that sit around? Well, no, we can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that you are not ready for and that you don't have the tools for, or that you are working on, which is one thing. But if you're actively avoiding something because you're scared, or because you just, and it could be something like a trauma, or a thing where you have the tools, you just either don't know you have the tools or haven't realized you have the tools, or it, more often than not, especially with Aries, it's a thing of fear. Bringing up the myth that I touched on before, you face the fear because you are stronger than the fear. You don't let the fear control you, which is another big thing. Is it's taking control of yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those. All right, I love this question. Thank you for asking it, Chris. What has Aries taught you that reflects in your life now? Kieran, you want to go first?
Yeah. For me, it's a lot of learning not to overthink things. A lot of don't think, just do. Especially in my personal relationships, it's his energy has basically pushed me to be like, okay, so you wanted to do this thing or say this thing for a really long time, and you keep overthinking what's going to happen when you say this thing. We're going to say it. And it's thus far gone very well for me.
I am glad that is the case. Sean, what about you? What did Aries teach you that you still utilize?
Kind of touching on the last question, but not to avoid my conflicts, but to push through them so I move on. Because that was a big issue with me before I held Aries, was I would push stuff aside until it exploded. Well, I learned from Aries, can't do that. You gotta deal with it and move on.
Yep. Nico?
My main focus when holding Aries was dealing with anger. And I grew up knowing that my genetics, from my parents, led to the potential and, at some cases, evidence of major anger potential. And I, for a long time, resented and hated and feared that side of myself, because I had seen what kind of person could come out of that anger, and I was kind of left avoiding a lot of things because I didn't want it to risk losing control of that anger. And it was a combination of learning what I can do to de-escalate myself, as well as learning that just because it's a part of me doesn't mean I need to hate it. I just need to adapt and learn what I can do to be the best form of myself, even with the flaws. Which one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever received since starting my own path was taking a half second and asking yourself why you're choosing to react a certain way. And I lived that mantra the entire year that I held Aries. And I use it every day at work. I use it in situations as summoner for the Evergreen Hearth. It's it changed completely how I entered situations of communication and conflict and not aggression, but when you butt heads or when you reach something that doesn't mesh right, just being able to manipulate the energy to the point where it's not the conflict, it's finding the flow. So conflict resolution as a very generic summary.
That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Nico. Wow, that was good stuff. Oh, well, we had an actually good question from Steven. He's asking about Aries, the zodiac sign. So Aries, the zodiac sign, and Aries, the god, are two very different things. They have some similar energies, but they are two very different things. So we're going to focus on the god Aries. All right, where are we? We are at 6:48. Okay, so I'm gonna get started on the last question. Are there any pieces of wisdom or things you want to share with those who are watching regarding Aries? Looks like Nico had something in mind. Nope.
I mean, I can pull something out of the hat. I just
We can have someone go else first. That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah. Sean or Kieran, anything jumping out at you that you would like to tell the peoples?
The short version of it is don't think, just do. But the long version of it is, if there's something positive in your life that you've been thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking of doing, but for whatever reason you haven't, either if it's a new skill you want to learn that you're afraid you're not going to be good at, if it's telling someone how you feel, whatever it is, you don't need to think about it that much. Like, Aries has the strength to help you push through that last little bit of thought and just do the thing.
Sounds like Aries would be great for my ADHD. Sean, do you have anything to add? No. No, never mind.
No, Aries is like a really, really aggressive case of untreated ADHD.
Yes. My thought train jumped the track.
Aries is like, you want me to give these people thoughts and ideas? I want you to just go do stuff.
Tots and pears.
The thought that popped into my head was, don't be afraid to ask him to help you through stuff. He'll be right there pushing you along. Yes, you will go first, but he'll be right behind you pushing you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Sean. Nico?
If you take a moment and allow that thing in your mind that you subconsciously think of when you think of something that scares you, to do, to say, to be, and then realize that there is a reason that is the subconscious thought you have in that regard, it is probably so much more important that you give yourself the time, the energy, and the chance to do, say, or be that particular thing than it is to allow yourself to continue hindering your forward motion by giving fear more power than it is deserved. Because fear is giving into the idea that you are not enough, or not ready. And if you remove that thought or that concept and then look at the situation again, you can oftentimes find that you are far more ready than you thought you were.
Well, that was, I think, a good note to leave off on. So I would like to thank the Temple of Aries for coming today and for answering questions and sharing your wisdom. Thank you so much again, our Votary Nico, our Vessel Kieran, and a past votive Sean. Let's see. Next up, we have Hephaestus joining us. Woo! So make sure you stay for that. If you would like to find out more about the Temple of Aries, you can either find them on Facebook as the Temple of Aries, or you can go to our website at www.atcwicca.org/temple-of-aries. Also, please remember to register for Spring Mysteries if you want to come learn even more about the deities and see these wonderful people at work. So remember, registration's open, www.springmysteries.com. And we will be back after a short intermission.